Hi, good evening, and welcome to this evening session of the 2025 Higher Heights Summer 2025 Trainers Speaker Series. If you have not been here before, welcome. My name is Jay Brandon. I am the National Programs and Political Director here at Higher Heights, the political home for Black women, where we are aiming and doing the work to ensure that this is a community of Black women who are equipped with the skills, the information, and the background to be active participants in our civic and political discourse. What that looks like on a daily basis is communications, fundraising, and programs such as this that bring to the forefront the skills, the information, the know-how on how to navigate the various systems. If you haven't already, please take this moment to share out tonight's link. We are going to be talking about building your squad, building campaign infrastructure. The We are going to be joined by the chairs of our action committee. This particular recorded session will be led by L. Joy Williams, as I noted, one of the co-chairs for our political action committee. And then later in the evening for Q&A, we'll be joined by Kimberly Allen Peeler, also a co-founder and co-founder of Higher Heights, and a co-chair of our political action committee. As I noted, take this moment to let your friends, family, those who are interested in running for office, those who may be interested in supporting a campaign or some of the elected opportunity. This is the program for them. And so, if you want them to be in the know, as you'll be in the know with this, this is the perfect opportunity. Be sure to stick around following the recording being played. As I noted, we will have a Q&A between myself. We'll be joined by Kimberly Allen Peeler. We'll be taking questions and providing more of the institutional knowledge and background information that wins campaigns and brings us all to the forefront of Black liberation and advancement. So without further ado, I will now play Building Our Squad, Building Campaign Infrastructure. Hmm. I'm getting a tech notice that my screen is not being shared. Hmm. Okay, let's reload it. No worries. I would get the programs where we have the major issues with screen sharing. It's great. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for watching and engaging in this conversation. I'm Joy Williams. I have the great pleasure of serving as chair of Higher Heights Political Action Committee, as well as chair emeritus of the organization of Higher Heights. And so delighted to be with you today to talk to you about something. It's a question that those of us who serve on the Political Action Committee for Higher Heights, we often ask the candidates who are coming before us seeking our endorsement. And one of those questions that we ask is, Tell us about your campaign infrastructure. Now, you may hear that phrase and you may think, oh, did I submit my filing? Did I do the requisite questionnaire? Did I file with the city, with the county? Do I have the website up or anything like that? For the purposes of our conversation for the next few minutes, I want to talk about what we mean when we ask you to tell us about your campaign infrastructure, okay? Because you can be the best candidate or you can have the best candidate, but you can also have a good message, a really great message. But if you do not have the campaign infrastructure in place to be able to help carry that message for a great candidate, then you are certainly at a disadvantage. So the infrastructure, just think of it as your bones, the bones and the muscle of your campaign. It is what props up the campaign and it helps you to be able to carry that message for the great candidate that you are or that you have. All right. Grassroots wins, Black women led efforts win. The campaigns that I have seen win have really great infrastructure. And that infrastructure is really the people, the systems, and the structures that you have for a winning campaign. And for us, we're going to describe what all of that entails. Some of you who are watching may have participated or seen me give this talk about building your campaign squad or building your campaign team. And that is the people that you should have in place, but we want to also talk about the other aspects that I mentioned, the people, the systems, and the structures that you have in place when we ask you that question. So that is what campaign infrastructure is, right? I want you to think about that. Things like communications. How are you communicating the great message that you have or telling the story of the great candidate that you are or that you have? How are you getting out into the field and identifying and recruiting voters, right? There is an infrastructure that is needed in order to do that. And then what other support do you have to be able to help carry that message? The other piece is fundraising. What infrastructure do you have in place to be able to raise the money necessary for you to win in your race? And then there are additional things like data, legal, obviously, the legal and compliance, and also your digital frame from that standpoint. So think of all of those things, as I mentioned, like your bones, the bones and the muscle that make you up, that allows you to stand upright, that allows you to walk. Those things are working in concert for you. And that is what we mean when we talk about campaign infrastructure. So let's start with the people, and not the people that you're trying to represent, but the people who make up your team. Okay. That could be anything from your campaign manager, your fundraising lead, your field director, who's going to be your organizing lead, your communications, to be able to communicate your message and your story, your scheduler, your compliance, your legal team, right? So that first part of your infrastructure is who are the people? Because, my dear, you cannot run the campaign yourself. And I know, I know you may be a great strategist. You may have been a campaign manager for someone else. You may have been all of those things. You may have worked for Obama. But if you are the candidate, you cannot be the campaign manager, the fundraiser, the media relations director. You cannot be those things all by yourself. Okay. So part of the question of tell us about your infrastructure is to tell us about the people who you have around you, who is the team that you have built to be able to make you successful. And it should not be you that is picking up any of those roles when we talk about the people. So the first question of uh, tell us about your infrastructure, or what does your infrastructure look like, is to tell us about the people that you have pull together to help you win this race. The next piece is the system and tools that you have for you to organize properly. There's data and information that you need. It needs to be organized and developed into a way that is easily usable by the team that you have put together. Okay, so that's anything from, are you using Van or Builder or any other kind of platform to be able to organize your field operation and your voter contact? Your website. What are you using for your fundraising tool? Are you using ActBlue? Are you using, something else? What your social media management? All of those things. Those are the systems and tools
Hi.
that are in place, so that your team can be successful. You have access to the information you need. You are able to file compliance and fundraising reports in a timely manner and make sure that they're accurate. If you have to collect petitions, what are the tools and the systems that you need in order to accumulate them, to verify them, and to submit them properly? So that next part of infrastructure is making sure that you have organized together and that your team has helped you develop this, and you can identify the systems and tools that you need for your race. Now, this is all relative, right? You may not have the same tools and systems as someone running for Congress versus you running for school board. So you want to make sure it is on par with the race that you are running. The same thing, can be said for the budget or the compliance that's necessary in your community. It's important to know all of those laws and all of those rules. And it's important that you have someone on your team that knows all of that, not just you, so that the whole team and the campaign can be in steady compliance going forward. So the next thing I want to talk about is your campaign timeline. This is a question that sometimes we ask candidates, and we may ask, what is the timeline, based upon when the election is going to be held? How are you pacing the structure of the campaign? And one might not think that the campaign timeline is part of your infrastructure, but it is, because you and your team need to know when you need to ramp up, when do you need resources, being able to communicate to supporters and donors when you need them, is really an important part of your infrastructure, having a plan in place. So not only the timeline, but an actual plan that you and your team are following. You know how many votes you need to win, that knowing what your win number is, knowing how much money you need to raise, that you need to have in order to win the race. Knowing those numbers and knowing those things, yes, you as a candidate need to know that information, because you need the goals of what you are doing, right? So if I'm asking you the question, how many voters do you need to contact in order to get you to the number of voters you need to turn out to win? How much money do you feel that you need in order to win this race? And it could be, in some places you are limited by how much you can raise and how much you can spend. You should know that, as well as your plan. You should know how many voters you're looking to target, that you're looking to talk to, how many doors you're looking to knock. All of that would be included in your timeline and plan. And part of your infrastructure is having all of that information and you knowing it as a candidate. The next thing is having a culture of accountability. And this is really important because you have brought together a team based upon the desire to elect you to represent your community and whatever level of government that is. And so during your campaign, you want to demonstrate also to the people you are seeking to vote for you. You want to demonstrate the level of accountability that you will show in that position. And so part of that is making sure that you are regularly checking in, looking at your plan, looking at the timeline and adjusting accordingly, and being able to pivot if necessary. If you can have the greatest plan and then something happens. So you need to be able to have an infrastructure in place that has accountability, but also regular check-ins to know being able to survey what the landscape of the campaign is, and being able to pivot if necessary. Okay. The other piece I wanted to talk about, we talked about people, we talked about the systems that you have in place and the structure for how you are going to continue to make a winning campaign. The other piece is how are you identifying and deploying the additional support that you may gather throughout the campaign? And so part of that infrastructure is also supporters. And not just the individual voters, but what are the other institutions that exist in the community that you are looking to represent? And do you have a process in place to be able to identify them, to recruit them, and deploy them? Right. So this can be anything from other elected officials to unions to cultural institutions that are in your community, and then how are you deploying them? Because it's not enough to just have a list of people who have endorsed you on your campaign website or have them have a quote in the paper. How are you deploying them to be able to engage in your campaign and to be able to communicate that information to the public? Okay, so that is another aspect of your systems and the things that you want to have in place. And that overall is what we mean when we're talking about having campaign infrastructure. Now, I know it seems like a lot. And I know I said that you cannot be doing all of those multiple roles yourself. And I stand 10 toes down on that. You have to be able to build a team. And certainly you can lean on supporters, those other institutions that I talked about, to be able to help you identify people that can help execute on some of these things, right? And you may also want to look at non-traditional spaces and individuals that could help you fill some of those roles. But if you do not have this type of infrastructure in place, it's going to be very difficult for you to execute a winning campaign. Now, here's some common mistakes that I've definitely have seen in my years that I want you to avoid. Number one, people not having clear roles and responsibilities. This is really important. I know you want to collect people and say, whatever you can do and everybody can pitch in. But at the end of the day, you also need to give them very clear instruction on what they're in charge of, because that is also part of accountability. People knowing what their role is, knowing specifically when it is due, and how they contribute to the overall structure and plan of the campaign. The other piece, not having a fundraising plan. You need to be able to answer the question of how much money do you need to raise in order to win? And that needs to include everything, for your field plan, for your media and communications, to be able to pay people. You need that number in your head so that when you are calling for dollars and you're calling people, you may get that question, but you also need to be able to communicate that and know what the plan is instead of just raising and spending, right? So you need to have that at the front and the top of your mind. The other piece, and this is really, really, really important, letting your friends and family become liabilities. I know we love them, and your auntie says she gonna put a fundraiser together for you, and your uncle said, "Don't worry, I got about 50 people that's gonna come down, and I'm gonna bring them in my van," and all of that kind of stuff. Or you got a few of them cousins that you don't want to be a story that said the cousin of X candidate, right? So it's really important. I recommend having those conversations with your family or friends about how they can participate and engage, and not giving or putting too much on people than you know that they can perform. The other thing, in this age, we are inundated with a lot of apps, with a lot of consultants who come promising that they can build your social media overnight. But I'm going to say something that I often say also about posters. Posters don't vote, and neither do tweets. Okay, yes, they contribute to a story, they contribute to a narrative, but don't spend so much money on investing in tech and apps and consultants when you could use that money in more precise ways to be able to deliver your message and get your campaign into the hands or to the eyeballs of actual people who will turn out and vote for you. So, apps and consultants on that standpoint and a digital footprint and moderation. You want to make sure that you are investing most of your time and resources into actual connection and engagement with voters. The other last thing I will say about that is you want to make sure that you have an alignment with your message and the mechanics or the systems of your campaign. I talked briefly about accountability. This is really important. And you want to demonstrate in your campaign infrastructure how you will lead in that elected position. So don't let it be a misalignment of your values or how you will lead as a school board member, as a congressional member, as a state senator. Make sure your campaign aligns with your values of how you plan to lead. So, what do winning campaigns do well? They build early, they grow sustainably, they focus on data and field, not just social media, right? And they treat volunteers like staff, like family. You treat all of the people that are working and engaging with you in that way. All right. And you are constantly evaluating in those staff meetings, those campaign team meetings, those huddles. You are constantly evaluating, are we meeting our goals? What do people need in order to meet their goals? Right. Those are the things that you need to have in place. All right. So I know that was a lot of information, but good infrastructure isn't flashy. It's really effective, and having the bones that I said, having those healthy bones to help hold you up and hold the campaign up will be good in the long run, because even if you're hit with unknown, if you have good bones, if you have good structure, you and your team will be able to address anything that comes your way, and you'll be able to pivot and stick and move and go on and accomplish your goals from there. All right. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. And as always, Higher Heights is always here to provide the information and the support that you need to build great infrastructure. Bye.
Welcome back. So thank you all for tuning in and sticking around through the technical difficulties that were taking place. Um, I'm going to now introduce, as I noted before, Higher Heights co-founder and co-chair of our political action committee, Kimberly Peeler Allen. I'll also just take a moment to correct my mistake before, as I mispronounced your name. But nonetheless, welcome. Want to say anything before we kick off and just summarize much of this conversation?
Oh, I'm just so happy to be here with all of you. I was texting with the staff. Um, as some of you know, I was in the trenches with the org for the first almost 10 years, and then have stepped more to a board and advisory position, and thinking about what these webinars, because we've been doing webinars long before COVID, because we knew that we wanted to make space for women, for Black women, to be able to get the knowledge that they need in from the safety and comfort of their couch, because we know when we step out, our the all eyes are turned to us, and it is really hard if we make mistakes. So we decided very early on that we were going to do these webinars. So we've been doing webinars and meeting people in virtual spaces for many years, but to see that it's continuing, and the production quality and all the things, I'm just so happy, and to see so many of you on. for this conversation. I've seen Eljoy do this presentation on building your squad and your campaign infrastructure many times, and I always take away something new from it. So I'm really looking forward to your questions. Please put them in the chat or in the Q&A. I see we already have a question in the Q&A, but I'm here for it. Let's dig right in. Um,
Yeah, so before we get to this question, I give folks a couple more minutes or seconds to drop other questions either in the Q&A function. I just went through the chat. There wasn't anything listed there. But as you just noted, this presentation, you took something away. This is my first time seeing Eljoy like put the presentation on before, but having heard her speak and knowing that she also comes from a campaign background, when I saw this, I was just immediately like, yes, this is it. It's concise. It's to the point. It is giving those ABCs, those one, two, threes of the things that are necessary for folks who are interested in running for office or really want to support someone being able to run for office. So there are some things that I definitely wanted to come back to in the presentation. But beforehand, let's get to this question from Cassia. I'm working a couple of campaigns this season and need to know how to charge. What's the best way to find out how to charge candidates for my services without pricing myself out of work? I have a feeling my normal consultants fee are too high for local campaigns.
That is an excellent question. And as a political consultant, I know how to answer this question well. I would say the first the best way to do this is to do your research on what, you know who your competitors are, who your fellow consultants are. Do your research in the campaign finance filings and see what they are charging for similar races and similar campaigns. And then price yourself accordingly. You may want to price yourself a little higher if you think that you are better than they are, and I hope you do. Or you may want to price yourself lower because you know that they charge a whole lot but they don't actually deliver. So, and then talk about why with your prospective candidates, why you're charging what you're charging, what is the value that you are bringing, not just the what you are going to do, and whether it is field or fundraising, but what is your intrinsic value, what is your experience that you are bringing to the table that others do not have, and that is the difference in your pricing structure. So I think it's really comes down to knowing what the field is charging. I mean, definitely what if any race that you're on, uh, it's also based off of the size of the budget. How much do you think that it's going to cost to do the voter engagement? How big is the race? How many voters are you going to have to touch? And I think that also will play into the equation as you set your fees. So I hope that was helpful.
That was a really good response to that question. And I wouldn't even add anything more to that. Pia, I see your question around the timeline. Give me a moment. I will follow up on that. I'm going to go to Nona's question. When Eljoy mentioned timing, my first thought was 107 days. How much time is necessary for a successful campaign?
It really depends on the type of race that you're running. It depends on how many voters you're trying to touch. I have seen candidates, we know about the 107 days, and that was a insane 107 days. And I have to, something in me sometimes says, well, maybe if we had 125 days, we would have done a little better. We would have had a different outcome. And then some folks would say, well, she needed the full 2-year runway. So it really depends on where, what is your positioning within the community that you are trying to lead? What is your name recognition before you even jump out there as a candidate? How many voters are you trying to touch? What is your win number as you think about that? And how long do you need to raise the money to be able to fund the operation and also put together the field campaigns so that you're touching those voters and then turning them out? I've seen school board races that really go in probably in about 6 weeks. Then I've seen congressional races that go for 2 years. So it really all depends on what you're running for and the size of the electorate that you're trying to message.
That is I think spot on to it. It can vary. The only thing I would add is if you see that there is an opportunity to step up now today for an elected office role, start planning it now. Give yourself the forward planning. There are term limits in some races. There are just different term periods. So some seats are 2 years, some are 4 years. So get that background information to go along with just like the building your squad uh timelines or infrastructure. Have that timeline a part of it as well, so that you really have a full spectrum understanding of the roadmap that is going to take. Because the other part in there, you got to calculate primaries and general elections and potential runoffs
Mhm.
and all those small things, or I don't want to say even call them small things, all of those things have a starting point months or weeks before in advance.
I would piggyback on that and say you have to start doing the work before have to start running before you start running.
Hmm.
So that means being out and about within your community, being seen as a leader, putting in the work, building the name recognition, so that when you actually start running and you have filed the paperwork to put your name on the ballot, people already know that you have done that you are a known quantity in the community, and that helps getting with building the campaign and the timeline and all of those things if you start running before you start running, so that you can, as Jay said, you can be prepared when those opportunities may present themselves.
Yeah, and I think that addition, Kim, was a good sort of moment to kind of pivot. We're going to come back to these questions, but a good moment to kind of pivot back into the presentation itself really quickly, um, and then answer the question and come back to the presentation again for something else. But in it, Eljoy talks specifically around the importance of the people and in imploring that the candidate recognize that they cannot be all these things at once. And you noted just there, just now, about the need to start to formalize your campaign and start running before you're actually running. And it really made me think of this previous instance around endorsement meetings and having folks show up for endorsement meetings. And the tips that I give to any candidate that I talk to now when it comes to those conversations. It reminded me of the first time I met Celeste Morris, one of Higher Heights members as well. And it was at an endorsement meeting. She was showing up in support of a candidate, a friend who was running for office. And the important part of that, it shows one, that this person had folks that were around them that were there to support them, whether they were a paid staffer for the campaign or showing up in a volunteer manner. And that's that legwork, that pre-work that has to be done before you start running, is knowing who those folks are, knowing that, like what we've been talking about here, who your squad is, what your infrastructure is, because it's important for them to also show up in those moments. In those meetings, they offer another voice, another insight into the structure of the campaign, what's going well. They can help pivot on in those moments of tough questions and help steer the conversation back in a direction that's worthwhile for the meeting and you potentially getting this endorsement, or even if it's for a fundraising pitch and acts, it helps in the same manner. And so that was definitely something that I wanted to bring forward and bring full circle as a part of this conversation. So getting to Pia's question on the timeline, could we see the timeline slide again, or have a recap? So yes. So the first part of that timeline is the filing deadline. You need to know when you need to have your paperwork in to be listed as a candidate for the ballot. You're going to need to know, and I would even just extrapolate that a little bit more around deadlines. You want to know not just filing deadlines, but petition deadlines. You want to know financial fundraising report deadlines. All of those things are important for compliance. The next part of that, it was financial in that timeline. So being able to have a timeline to help with fundraising. So knowing when reporting is due so that you are making every effort possible to bring in all the dollars that you can. Followed behind that is election day. So once you know your filing deadlines, you know your reporting regulatory moments, you start working to ensure that your field plan is enacted. You're counting down the days, how many doors you're gonna knock, how many phone calls you're gonna make, how many more volunteers you need to bring in the door to fully execute your plan. And then it was post-election wrap up. So even once all of the ballots are casted, there are still some legal compliance measures that must be taken to ensure that things are properly wrapped up. So that was an overview of the timeline that L. Joy gave in the presentation. And so, as I noted, Kim, I wanted to circle back a little bit to the presentation, and if you could extrapolate a little bit more to just provide some more one, two, three steps around fundraising. We know that fundraising is a huge component of running campaigns. We also know that Black women oftentimes are not um, given political contributions in the same manner as their white counterpart to other candidates. And so, if there are just some initial one, two, three steps around fundraising that you could offer, I'm hoping you can share. You're muted.
Of course. Fundraising is my jam. And I would say to start your fundraising plan, the best way to do it is look at historically what has happened in the race that you are seeking. Are you challenging a long-term incumbent and no one has ever actually mounted a significant challenge to them? What did those people raise and spend? What did the incumbent raise and spend? And then think through, where you think you can fall in there. So I generally start with, going through my friends and family and trying to put dollar amounts next to all of their names. And then also think about the inflection points of when you need to spend your money. Because thing about campaigns is that it is actually a small business that you are running. So everything from business insurance.
Okay, you came back.
Sorry, the AirPods dying and picking back up. You're running a small business. So think about when you want to open a campaign office. What is that expense going to be? What is it going to cost to keep it open? And the lights on, and are you subsidizing people's cell phone bills? When are you going to have not people knocking on doors and you have to print literature and t-shirts? How much is that going to cost, and when do you need to have that done? Do you have to petition? So that is time bound. Are there legal expenses around that petition? So thinking through these things, as well as what do you need for GOTV? So you've spent all of your campaign, whether it's 6 weeks or 2 years, campaigning in your community. Now it's time to pull out your voters. How much money do you need to have to make sure that you have volunteers, that you have food for your volunteers, gas money if necessary, to pull out, last minute pieces of literature? Do you want to, God willing, you win and you have a victory party somewhere? What are you thinking about in terms of those expenses, and chart that out backwards, and then figure out, where do resources generally come from? People always say, well, I don't know how to raise money. Nobody in my network has money. Well, the way I look at it, we all have different amounts, but we all have US currency, which can be used to fund a campaign. So whether it is someone giving you $5 a month for the length of your campaign, or someone giving you a maximum contribution, all of it helps. So you just have to continue to work at it and ask your friends and family who are supportive of you if they know of other people. so much of, I mean, that's how we built Higher Heights. Glenda and I sat down and went through our phones and said, and started calling people and asking them for support, asking them for resources to help us build. And part of that was also asking them to introduce us to other people. So this is also part of your campaign infrastructure. Who are the folks within your network that can help introduce you to more voters, introduce you to potential fundraisers, or people who would give you money? So these, that is also part of your kitchen cabinet and part of the infrastructure that helps your campaign grow and thrive. So I would say those are kind of the big steps, to think through what you need, and then be able to work backwards and start to identify resources. Are there structures and institutions within your community, whether they're labor unions or maybe civic organizations that give politically, that you can reach out to who would be supportive of you? It's also, as Eljoy talked about, how do you use your endorsers? It's all well and good for them to be a vocal supporter of yours, but what does that really mean? How are they really incorporating and being a true value add to your operation?
Thank you for that. That was very insightful. As I noted, we oftentimes hear about the challenges candidates as a whole, but particularly Black women face when it comes to fundraising. And from someone who's worked on campaigns, those three steps right there are very much critical steps to bettering your fundraising position, understanding, know-how, and execution. So thank you. So as we start to move towards closing, there are a few more questions that we have. Um, as a nonprofit fundraiser, how can I offer my resource mobilization skill sets to local and regional campaigns?
I love this question
Hmm.
because as a nonprofit fundraiser, you're probably someone who is highly organized. And campaigns need people who are highly organized. So you could be, if you didn't want to, flip the tables and raise money politically, you could be a volunteer coordinator. You could help as an office manager, helping them manage the budget. There are many ways that they're transferable skills. And I want you to definitely think about that as you're thinking about the people in your network, not just what their 9 to 5 is or what their degrees in or what you know them to do, but how is that skill set transferable to what your needs are in your campaign? Or do you have somebody who has a great voice? I was actually just talking about a friend of mine who, on a very early city council race, he has an amazing voice. So he recorded all of the radio spots for the candidate because we couldn't afford voice talent. And he was like, well, I'll do it. And we were like, this is great. So, people have all sorts of skills. And, then you just also have to ask, say, you
Hmm.
know what, I need somebody who does X, or I'm looking for, I'm trying to do Y and I don't know how to do it. And put it out there in the universe. And your network should be able to, in many cases, fill those needs for you in ways that you probably haven't expected.
Uh, That yes, and I will use this moment as a nice opportunity to shamelessly plug that in the coming months, as we prepare for 2026, Higher Heights will be launching a volunteer academy where we're going to be looking for individuals who have a variety of skill sets and want to figure out nuanced and creative ways to use those skill sets to help support our internal work and volunteer efforts, but also how we can then better align and support externally those who are interested in being more a part of the civic and political discourse. So be on the lookout for that. All right, we have two more questions. I'm going to go in this order. How should you use family in campaigning? Unfortunately, family members can be detrimental.
Again, figure out what everybody's skill set is. And if you see that someone in your family may not be the best person to have out on the front lines, you can say, you know what I need for you to do is, pick up my kid from school every day. That is a valuable asset that they can provide. Figure out, it doesn't necessarily have to be, because people get very excited when they see that you're stepping out and running, and they want to be involved. And the ways that they can be involved don't necessarily have to be, specifically on the campaign side. It's supporting you in your life.
Mhm.
And, whether it is, taking a, your partial caregiver to your parents, taking a shift with them, making a meal, going to somebody's basketball game because you can't make it, or whatever it is. Or it may just be like, I need you to pray for me. Just figure out how best they can be supportive and they can be helpful in a way that is beneficial to your campaign. I've seen campaigns where like that the brother-in-law is the man. He is the treasurer. He is on top of all. He's a CPA and he is leaned in, and that is a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Or like grandma wants to do all that she can. She's going to give her money out of her pension to be supportive, and she's going to pray for you every Sunday at church. Beautiful. You need it all. You need it all.
One thing I'd add to that is one of the beautiful things that I've been able to experience in being here at Higher Heights specifically and doing the political work. And so that has allowed Kim and I to interface frequently, is how there's an actual engagement around care for the candidate and what the candidate is doing as a part of the campaign to look out for themselves and to center their own well-being. And oftentimes what we hear are stories about family, and helping them to take moments to breathe and step away, to not be in the thick of it at all times. I love the analogy of we have to put our mask on first before we help others. And it's the same thing in running a campaign. It's really a marathon in many instances. We heard that there are some of those that are sprints, but in many instances, they're marathons. And so it's important that folks do have identified roles and folks are sorted in places that provide the most optimal opportunity for everyone to flourish in this exercise of running for office. So thank you. We have one last question. I think this is a good question to conclude on and think about, just like how do we continue to broaden our horizons? How do we continue to broaden our networks? How do we continue to soak up as much information as possible, so that we're being effective in this movement space, in this work around advancement and liberation. So it's asked, besides CBC convening that's later this month, and if you haven't already, and we'll be in DC, please sign up RSVP to attend our CBC, our 12th annual CBC reception taking place that Friday evening at 6 p.m. But what other national convenings would be recommended for campaigners and candidates to meet national donors and C4 leaders?
Well, I think it's really dependent on what your interests are. I think thinking through, are you somebody who's very interested in tech? Then maybe going to South by Southwest is a good place for you to go and network and meet people. Are you someone who is, or going to Netroots, which just passed earlier this summer? That is another place where you can go and network with like-minded folks. Uh, Many C4 leaders, some donors are circulate through there, and I think really, I mean, particularly on the national donor front, it is really a matter of how far can you stretch your network. I mean, it's amazing when you sit down and you think about it and you start asking, well, who knows this person? Or maybe it's not a specific person that you're trying to get to. Maybe it's just a matter of, oh, I'm looking at people who are interested in crypto because that's something that I'm very interested in. And through your network and through LinkedIn and other tools, you may find other ways of connecting to folks. But I would say generally be out and about. The challenge I would say, and I've seen this with candidates where they go into particularly some movement spaces, they tend to be very populated by people who are in the traditional C3 nonprofit space, and they will not engage with candidates because they're concerned about jeopardizing their C3 status. So I would really rely on the networking and using your own Rolodex, and doing some relationship mapping to see who you can get to. And then as you put it out there that you're looking to meet so and so, there may be a regional tech conference or a regional environmental conference that someone in your network can tell you about and invite you to. And the people who are attending those things, they may have resources, but more specifically, they're very rooted in your community already. So they know about, the river, 25 miles up the road that is polluted. And they know that that is something that is, motivating you to run for office. And they're, very well versed in that already. So I think it's really thinking through that. As a fundraising consultant, I tell people all the time, I don't walk around with a binder full of donors and just say, okay, here, they're all going to give. It is really the relationship mapping and building that connection of why they should care about you and what you're going to do to advance this thing that you both care about. So, I would definitely say that. And just continue to keep an eye out around things that look interesting. And just whether it is if you're involved in a C4 that's doing advocacy days in Washington, go and do that. You never know who you might meet in a hotel lobby. And then it's also helping you build relationships with other people who are active. If they've taken time out of their schedule to travel to Washington to lobby Capitol Hill, chances are they probably have some resources that they could probably write you a check to.
Mhm.
So, it's definitely build. You have to build the relationships. It is very rare that a just someone out of the blue will write you a check unless you have done something really spectacular that they've heard about. And then, that is a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you, Kimberly, for your tremendous insights as a it's not a standing. You came in and you held it down in the absence of Eljoy, and it to me just spells out the family of Higher Heights, that you were not only just available but in a happy, willing participant in tonight's conversation. So truly, truly, thank you.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
we are at the close of tonight's session, but before we go, I really want to take a moment to not only thank the audience for tonight's engagements, tonight's conversation, but for the previous weeks beforehand. We are coming to the final stretch of this summer training series, and it has been a joy to facilitate alongside this internal Higher Heights team, but then externally having you all take part in it. So the next 3 weeks, don't let up. Please be sure to come back and join us. We have some really impactful live sessions coming your way. We're going to be talking about organizing outside of big cities. Next, we're going to be talking about organizing the youth vote. And then we're going to conclude with what I think will be a powerful session with two Black women who have been on the front lines, one who has run for office and one who has been behind the scenes running some of the most pivotal campaigns that we've heard about before. So I hope you will continue to join us over these next 3 weeks ahead of our CBC activation. If you haven't already, please be sharing this information with your friends, your family, your network, bringing as many people into the fold as possible. In the meantime and between time, please take care of yourselves, be well, and we will talk and see you all soon. Thank you and have a good night.